Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian own nothing, control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live, listening, replay. Always appreciate everybody that tunes in live, listen, replay. This is the Tuesday episode, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do a traditional weekly episode, so you get a chance to listen to it live. You know that standard episode, or hit the notifications button, hit the subscribe button, so you can actually get the notifications of when we do the pop-up episodes with guests. Definitely excited to, on this episode, talk about the workshop we have coming up. Just feel free to reach out. We definitely will make sure in the description you'll have the email, proper email. It actually will be on a flyer on the screen. So you get a chance to see it, hfrn period vault at gmail.com. Once again, that's hfrn period vault at gmail.com. We're just taking care of some things. Had to take care of some things over at the vault, so we're just working through some things, but nevertheless, we definitely are doing a workshop for our trustees coming up, particularly the foundation trustees here. What is that? On the 19th of November. So you'll see the flyer come up here in a second. But outside of that, definitely excited about the workshop. Just this episode in general here today. When we want to talk about uh, what we're talking about today, which is episode 400 and what is this? Episode 432, common law trustee language. Definitely want to do this episode. So many times trustees have come back to us for years and years, and they always say the first thing that they recognize when they come into trustee training, which is, oh man, I want to get the language down. I got to get the language down. And the biggest thing for people transitioning into the private is getting the language down. And we had a great affirmation or confirmation this past week with trustees that just abundantly said that the learning curve that the vault provides with the language, focusing on the language, harping on the language, is very, very important. People talk about, well, where do I learn the language? We talk about at the vault, having read the Black's Law Dictionary years previous to actually being in trustee training, that helped. But then when we get into trustee training, you have a good base of wanting to, or a good base of understanding of what's called legalese or language in general. In the law side, is very, very important to have. So definitely excited to have been able to have that training, provide that training to trustees and their families. Uh, when we go over the language, whether it's legalese, and we've had trustees ask us for years now, you know, why is it so challenging to get the language in? Part of it is because of programming. When you are not given the language pretty much legalese from the beginning of business, or when you turn 18, when you enter into the business realm, there's a language of contract. Contract makes the law. So, in turn, when you hear people use these superlatives, these ad hominems, when you hear these different forms of the English language in context, a lot of times they're not in context. They're forcing individuals to focus on the content, which is just a word that's being used. You have people that are really good at utilizing the language, and in turn, that may change how people perceive things. Because when you hear information, you may or may not grasp it. We'll give you an example. Common law trustee language. Something as simple as knowing what a P&L is. Now, this may be a foreign object to somebody that's not in trustee training, or might be a foreign object to somebody that may not be in business for themselves. But when it comes down to it, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know what a P&L is, of course it's a disadvantage. Of course you don't know the language. So it's rather important to know the language. People say, "Oh, I think I know the language." What language do you know? Do you know the language of law, the common law trustee language, or do you know the common colloquial slang language that when you go to different parts and different regions, hello, hola, or saying different terms for greetings is different. Well, they had to have a uniform language. It's the common law trustee language. It was the language that it's called the public language. But do you speak the public language properly? Do you know the public language? Are you familiar with the public language? This is the question that people have for trustee training when they say, oh, I'm gonna get in trustee training, I'm gonna learn this stuff, and I'm gonna be out. Well, trusteeship is a lifestyle. So when we talk about trusteeship, we're talking about something that you live. The language is a part of that. Bottom line, common law trustee language. People say, oh, I'm so used to doing it this way. Well, that's the public sector. When you go into the private, you got to speak the private language. Otherwise, people say, oh, I'm going to feel lost. See, it's these financial terms that you may or may not know. Then, when we're sitting on the line with a trustee and we're talking to them about a triple net lease, something that's very simple. It's a very simple contract that's executed in the public at your everyday strip mall. But being able to have these conversations about trusteeship, conversations about business, conversations more about contracts, it makes you proficient in negotiation because contract makes the law. So we definitely are excited about this workshop coming up for the foundation trustees. A lot of people are already going to be there just because of the foundation trustees, and we definitely have been looking forward to doing this more in person. But webinar for now is going to be something where we're going to focus on make sure that the foundation trustees are fed in a respect that they're going to get training. What does the training entail? You got to associate. When you associate, you get what we're talking about, whether it's compliance, whether it's how do you maneuver in the foundation. They say so many foundations don't have capital, or so many foundations aren't operating as what they call as a, what do they call the charities? Non-profit. They're operating as non-profits. They're not operating as what? As businesses, as asset holders and asset growers. Endowments of colleges are what? Investments. They're charitable asset managers, managing money in funds. That's why they call it an endowment fund. So when we talk about, can you do it from a charitable perspective? Schools are showing you they can do it from a charitable perspective. Whether enrollment's up or down, the building's going to get clean. Whether enrollment's up or down. Common law trustee language. That's the language of trusteeship. It's trust Christian know not to control everything. That's what it is. Common law trustee language is for trustees staying in student mode and knowing that there's a lot of financial terms in business that you're open to learning. And it's a never ending process because they're creating new acronyms all the time. Different industries are being created all the time. So they're creating new acronyms. But I wanted to go into the UCC, and I wanted to go into the secured party creditor. I wanted to go into that real quick, Trust Christian, because when I see that stuff, isn't that common law? It's a private contract between who? Myself, right? How you gonna make a how you gonna make a contract between? It's only one private self. It's not two. So it would be more applicable if it was two private people, separate individuals. But how are they separate? The fiction that people utilize and create and operate in the public, it's a fiction. Who created that? Or what the government created? The government would have never been able to create a name on a birth certificate if that person was never born. So you created the fiction indirectly. And you're utilizing the fiction as a business name, not knowing that you're mixing business and personal. So when we get into oh, well, I want to have a contract between me and my all capital name. How is there a difference when you're the signer for both? You're the signer for your private name, you're the signer for the public name. That can't work. There's a little conflict of interest in that respect. Two separate parties? Yes. That's a contract and an agreement. Oh no, I'm going to indemnify myself against the contract that against the corporation that I created. Sounds a little bit different. When we talk about, oh, well, I'm gonna just go ahead and get into this stuff, and I'm gonna try to free myself from the bondage of the government. What are you talking about? The message of fear and redemption is over. The message of self-reliance, self-dependence, that's what's important. You gotta ask yourself, are you gonna depend on the government for your retirement? Are you gonna depend on the government for anything? Common law trustee language is focused on self-reliance. Common law trustee language. One of those things where it's one of those things where you just come down to it. You say, hey, can you teach an old dog new tricks? You're sitting here for years now. You're in the private. You're dealing with accredited and unaccredited investors. Unaccredited investors, they almost are laughing stock. They're in the private. They're trying to attempt to be in the private sector. Sometimes they don't have the qualifications, so they sneak into these private endeavors. They get in these private endeavors, and then what happens? Do you learn the language? Is it the old dog new trick saying, or is it, oh, I'm gonna take it to heart. I'm gonna take this serious. I'm gonna take it serious. Oh man, well, are we gonna take it serious? Maybe. I picked it up. I put it down. I picked it up. I put it down. How's that taking a lifestyle serious? It sounds good to the unaccredited investor. To the accredited investor, they have a lot more to lose. They have a lot more to lose, and they move in that manner. Usually, they'll have more of a team around them. Common law trustee language means you have a team around you. You have good lawyers and good accountants. Oh man, we had a trustee recently tell us we called some lawyers and some attorneys, and they said they weren't too familiar. Right, because it's private information. Just because they went to a public law school doesn't mean they have a private education. But they do know if you ask them specific questions, whether it's the contract, you got to ask the attorney and the correct attorney at that. Can't just ask any Joe Schmo attorney. You have to ask the correct attorneys that would know contract, that know how to deal with contracts. Oh, well, we're gonna contact local Larry instead of contacting a firm. There's a difference. Oh, we're going to contact these people that have the LLP at the end of their name. Well, that's a limited liability partnership. So are they in there with a bunch of other lawyers? Are they working together? Do they have malpractice insurance? These are the things that we talk to the trustees about when they ask these questions in the private. We have no problem with talking about it in the public because these are conversations that are traditional conversations in business in general, whether they're public or private. We have them in general, but having the conversation is very, very important. Definitely want to talk about it. Uh, at the workshop, we're going to be talking about it for sure because when you're able to travel internationally and do business internationally, that's the common law. There's jurisdictions. Oh man, I'm gonna be a sovereign. What they say, I'm gonna be a sovereign. How you gonna be a sovereign and be stateless? How can you be a sovereign and be stateless? But I'm gonna be a common law sovereign. I'm a sovereign individual, or whatever that means. They tried to almost ban that term on the internet. They came down hard on people on the internet for it. Oh, I'm a sovereign, blah blah blah. They're a sovereign. Sovereigns? How are they? How are they operating in jurisdiction to jurisdiction? There's jurisdictions because there's a language. There's jurisdictions because there's a language associated with. When you go into a Muslim jurisdiction and you're dealing with Arabic, the laws are different. The language is different. The common law trustee language gives you a good determination of the jurisdiction you're in. You're in an English jurisdiction for the most part. And English is the number one spoken language in the world. Now, we don't have common law in every jurisdiction that speaks English. A lot of jurisdictions will speak English, but they don't have common law as their language, as their law system. But they speak English. Common law trustee language. When you're dealing with those English jurisdictions, you got a fighting chance where there's a rule of law. Common law trustee language knows that. Common law trustee language knows not just capitalism, but something where there's a rule of law. You have to make sure the government's secure to where if you do have to sue somebody, you can. That's the difference. Common law trustee language is definitely going to be about that. Know how to operate in different jurisdictions. Speaking the language. How are you dealing with those contracts in those jurisdictions? Are they written in foreign languages or are they written in a native tongue of that law? People try to get fancy throughout the years. It comes down to a few things. Applying what you know in the right times. Now, a lot of people say, oh man, I know about the system in the States. It's contract based. Okay, great. Apply it. People say, oh man, I don't want to be under anybody's control. Well, if you are the sovereign, that means you can sign a contract to end a contract. Just like you can sign a contract to start something, to create a binding agreement. I don't want to be up under anybody in particular. You don't want to be up under. But do you want their military protection? By default, you get military protection. That's a default. That's how you know freedom's not free. That's why they got laws that say you gotta house the troops. They got laws for that in a common law system. What if you have to house enemy troops? This is where we are nowadays. Do people know the common law? Maybe not. Why? Because there's so many new statutory laws coming out every day, new legislative laws coming out every day. Common law's been around for hundreds of years. How long has statutory been a law's been around? Yeah, you all can do the basics on the public history, and then when it went commercialized. Oh, it was after the bankruptcy, okay, in 1933 or 1913, and all this other good stuff. Well, if it's in a commercial position, a public position, a business position, still dealing with contracts, still dealing with a common law trustee language. Oh, they told us not to look at the Black's Law dictionaries, not the old ones. You gotta look at the new ones. But then the gurus on the internet tell us to look at the UCC because this is going to be our freedom ticket. So what is the UCC standing on? The common law trustee language. That's what it's standing on. Contract law. Because contract makes the law. That comes from common law. So the foundation training, once again, is not just for the non-profits, as people like to portray and put out there for these charities nowadays. It's not for the non-profits. It's actually for families making investments with the permanent investments from a charitable perspective because it's important. And it's interesting to hear the accredited investors versus the unaccredited investors. Really interesting right now. You hear the difference in the marketplace. Who's hemming and hawing? Who knows common law trusteeship a language, or who knows common law trustee language, and who's gasping for so-called air in the public market? The non-foundation trustees that, oh man, I don't know, 350 is a good entry. Well, let's think about this. It's so many ways to think about it. It's so many ways to think about it. Well, we know the trustees that pull the trigger, the ones that are already in the program through the Foundation Family Trustee Training. That's where we are. That's where we are with it. We're not anywhere else with it. People say, "Oh man, do you need to advertise these things?" We don't. We're just sharing it with people and let them know that the entry is not free. Because the trustees that are foundation trustees, their families are in a position where they understand what we're talking about. So the 350 was definitely included, and they know that in whatever they were taking care of for their families. So this is just a set date that we have for the foundation families. It's definitely going to be a good one because you got to systematize everything. Any additional information help. This is just a quarterly newsletter that we got to do, and we got to say, hey, these are for the families that are focused on these type of environments, and we do have quite a few families that are in these environments, and we look forward to serving them and working with them. So this is going to be a blast to continuously bring this type of content to the families, the resource to the families, and look forward to hearing from them. So definitely look forward to all the families reaching out. Uh, HFRN period vote at gmail.com. That's the email you can reach out to for registration. It's a formal email. We definitely make it a point to let the families know, this isn't a bag situation. We're focused on, hey, the biggest thing is we definitely want to have a quality intake, and that in turn means that being able to know who's coming in and working specifically and tailoring the training to those families is very, very important. We always have very controlled environments with our families, so we definitely have a very tailored approach to the families that are in the room. Very specific messages, highlight points for the families that are in the rooms, because it is one of those things that's very, very important when it comes down to it. Is being able to tailor the workshops to the actual families or the webinars to the actual families. Sure, there's a lot of similarities, but there's definitely highlight points for each family. And, because it's a controlled environment, we always make it a point to, go directly to the families and be able to go over what we need to go over with the families and things of that nature. So, uh, once again, foundation trustees, non-foundation trustees, feel free to reach out. Christian at trust, was it HFRN period vault at gmail.com. Once again, that's HFRN period vault at gmail.com. That's the email we're using. And even if you want to do a consultation, feel free to reach out. HFRN period vault at gmail.com. Going in towards the end of the year, everything always goes up. A lot of people, they always wait to the end of the end of the year to, really try to put themselves and their family into the position that we're going into next year and let's get things prepared for the first of the year. Usually those are going to be your peak times and, just for busyness and, getting around and really working with the families. A lot of times, when working with these families, uh, of course, we're going to be in those environments with them towards the end of the year with lawyers, accountants, sitting around even in the first of the year, lawyers, accountants, and things of that nature, and just things get really really busy towards the end of the year. So. And even now, they're still busy. So look forward to the families that reach out, even in the coming months, and as well right now. Look forward to hearing from you all. Look forward to seeing you all at the webinar, and being able to tailor the approach to every family and everyone that's on the line, because it is going to be something that's going to be a tailored approach, not just a blanket, come on here, spit out. We can always do that, but the tailored approach works the best. It keeps things very succinct, and families get a lot of value out of it. So look forward to hearing from you all. HFRN period vault at gmail.com. HFRN period vault at gmail.com. Look forward to hearing from you all. Peace and